Welcome to the Practice Brave podcast. I am the host, Brianna Battles, founder of Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism and CEO of Everyday Battles. I'm a career strength and conditioning coach, entrepreneur, mom of 2 wild little boys, and a lifelong athlete. I believe that athleticism does not end when motherhood begins, and this podcast is dedicated to coaching you by providing meaningful conversations, insights, and interview topics related to fitness, mindset, parenting, and of course, all the nuances of pregnancy and postpartum. From expert interviews to engaging conversations and reflections, this podcast is your trustworthy, relatable resource for learning how to practice brave through every season in your life. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Practice Brave podcast. Today I'm here with Julia Scardone, and I'm really excited to talk to her as someone who is in the combat sports world, and she's a mom, and she actually reached out to me wanting to connect because she listened to so many different podcasts we've done with other athlete moms in the combat sports scene. And as somebody who has truly grown up and evolved and become a mother while participating in these sports, she's had a variety of experiences, and it's been really cool to get to know her. And I'm excited for you all to get to know her and learn about her story and her experiences. So Julia, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I've been following your stuff for ages now, absolutely ages. And whenever I've needed sort of a pickup, because I think this shit is too hard, I can't do it. No one else is doing it. I would have a look at your page and think, no, do you know what? These girls have got their shit together. They're going through the same thing. So let's go. We'll keep going.
Well, absolutely. I think like a huge part of it is like we find people and communities that we relate to, that we, that there's like similarities to, either in like the lifestyle they're living, the sport that they're doing, how they speak, who they speak to. And I'm happy that we can both kind of embody that. So give us a little bit of your background. Like how did you get to where you are now in terms of sport, motherhood, your background is?
So I've done judo. I grew up in Brazil. So I'm originally from Brazil. And Brazil is not a very rich country. So very long story short, my parents never had a lot of money in the country. And if you don't have a lot of money in Brazil, you're not in a good position. So at the time, me and my brother, when we were younger, when we went to secondary school, we were going to public schools. In Brazil, if you go to a public school, that means it's not a very good school. If you want to get good education, you need to go privately, which costs money. So what my parents kind of did, it was kind of very smart of them, and I think they've got good manager skills. Me and my brother used to do judo from 5 years old. And it's quite a popular sport in Brazil. And you have competitions every weekend. Fighting sports, generally speaking, are quite big in Brazil. So what they did was they reached out to private schools in our local area and said, look, this is my child. They do sports and they take it reasonably serious. They train every night. They do competitions all over the country. Would you be interested in having your school's name all over their judo kits in exchange for education? So potentially almost like a sponsored athlete kind of thing. After a lot of no's, they finally got a yes. And me and my brother managed to get into really, really good schools. But we only got through that through judo. So it was almost like I got into judo because we were a little bit naughty. So my mum and dad wanted us to have a bit more discipline. And then after a certain point of my life, we were in judo because it was what was providing me with my education. So I knew that it was something that I wanted to do and I liked to do it, but it was also, that's what I do. There was no other choice of not doing that. So that's how we kind of got into it. And then when I was 13, I moved to England from Brazil, and I couldn't speak English. I didn't know much about the culture. I didn't know anything whatsoever. And the only thing that felt like home, or the only thing that I understood, was judo. Getting on the mat and just fighting someone. It was something that I had done my whole life, and that translates all over the world. So then I stuck with it because it was the only thing that I could do. So fast forward a couple of years, I got my British passport. So I've managed to get to the GB squad. I started fighting for Great Britain, did various things. And yeah, had a really good career. I think from the age of 17 to about 21, 22, I was full-time training at a place called Camberley Judo Club. It's just on the outskirts of London. And they have a training set up there where they have a dojo. We call it like the mat area. And then across the road, not even across the road, maybe 5 meters in front of the dojo, you'd have the accommodation block, which there was about 30 of us living in there. 4 girls at the time. Yeah, about 4 girls. Everyone else were men. So I did that for all of those years, just competing all over everywhere, just catching flights everywhere, fighting, and it was amazing. And then eventually it was time to call it quits for various different reasons. And myself and my partner does it as well. And at the time, he decided to call it quits as well. So we kind of retired from judo. And he got a job opportunity up north where we live now. And we moved. So when we moved, he had his normal job, I had my normal job, but we had been fighters our whole life. So you take a fighter into the normal world, put them there, put them in a normal job, and watch them go crazy. And we both kind of were like, what the hell are we doing? Like, this is just not, we need to fight. We need to do something, if it's for training, anything. So we looked for local clubs around the area that we're in, and it just wasn't the style. We had been athletes our whole life. So we kind of trained to a certain level our whole life. So although we didn't want to go back to competitive sport, we also didn't want to take it easy in our training, if that makes sense, So we didn't find anywhere that was sort of our style around our area. So we said, do you know what? Let's just open up something small, And in the city, there was this young lad who my partner started training him, and his dad had almost like a garage. There was no toilet in there. It was literally just a couple of mats on the floor, fucking freezing cold in there. And he was like, look, if you coach my kid, you can have this mat area for free. And we were like, do you know what? Let's put 2 sparring nights per evening. And then that eventually, in 3-4 years' time, we've moved 3 times now. Now we've got a huge club called Cows and Gracie Hall. It's known all over the world. And it just kicked off. So we both live off that now. We've fully immersed ourselves into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I started competing again. So I've come from retirement from judo to full on doing everything and, getting to big shows and things like that. So it was kind of none of it. My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu pathway was not in any way, shape or form planned. I did not mean to do any of it. So yeah, that's a very long story short.
Well, I love it. And I feel like I have so many questions. So what instigated the move from Brazil to England initially?
Do you know what? It's literally because life in Brazil is so tough. Yeah. So if you are from a certain socioeconomic background, it's tough, And my parents realized how tough it was. There were things that have happened that were very close to home that have happened. And they thought that could have been our child that this has happened to. We need to move. And luckily, my dad has got Italian family. So we've had our Italian citizenship. So we were okay to move anywhere in Europe. And at the time, my parents said, what are we doing in Brazil? It's becoming dangerous. It's not, we're struggling to put food on the table. So we need to leave. And at the time, I was 13. My brother was around 18, 19. My dad moved first. He was around here for about 6 months or so. Then my brother followed, and then me and my mom came as well.
Yeah. So I feel like, having that kind of significant move at that point in your life where you're old enough to remember, where you're very much in a developmental phase, that instills a certain level of resilience, and then having to learn a whole new language, adjust to a whole new culture, and then finding I guess that was your first exposure to using sport as a way to become who you were becoming and create what you needed, finding community, building community. And you did that at like 13. And I feel like it's just interesting to connect those dots between now what you've done in growing a business where you like started really small, but you created what you wanted and what you needed and a way to have community. And I just really appreciate the parallels there.
It's crazy. It's you've said it perfectly there. It's creating something for yourself, because I had something in Brazil. I had my friends, and a 13-year-old, that's a decent age. You know what's going on in the world. And it was moving to England, and it was like, I have nothing. I know nothing. I know no one. I don't even know how to speak English. And I'm a very sociable person. I love being around people and so on. So I think judo, at first it was almost like a job. And then it became almost, this is who I am, because I can't even communicate with these people. They don't know who I am. So they know Julia, that's the girl from Brazil that can't speak English, but she's all right at fighting. So, we'll hang around with her kind of thing. So I became that sport, and everything that I did was surrounded by judo even more. I was so kind of immersed into only that, because when I went to school, I didn't know what people were saying. I didn't have any friends. I couldn't relate to anyone around me. It was very different. Whereas at judo, although I couldn't communicate, the sport was there, and the unspoken rules are there, and the way that you carry yourself, that's the same all over the world. That's just the sport, isn't it? So certain things you can relate. So yeah. That was it. That was me. I am judo now. I'm no longer Julia. I'm just this girl that does the sport.
Absolutely. And for those listening, I think there's familiarity now around jiu-jitsu. There's familiarity around boxing or kickboxing, but maybe less familiarity with judo and the kind of athleticism it requires and how that sport works. So can you describe what judo is for those who don't have familiarity?
The best way to describe it to someone that has no idea is wrestling with pajamas on. I know it sounds stupid, but
so jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And, I would say as well, it's very similar to jiu-jitsu, but we do a lot of stand-up work. So the throw-in is a lot more dominant than our groundwork. A lot of people who do judo, well, that's what we used to do when we were full-time. You do your judo sessions, and then you jump into the BJJ sessions to improve your groundwork. So the two sports translate to each other so well. And I've come into BJJ, I'm going to say I was brand new, because although I was full-time judo, I only trained BJJ once a week. Mm-hmm. That was part of my training schedule, once a week. And, at the time I was like, I'm a judo player. I don't need to know any of this stuff. So, how much I actually learned during all of those years that I've done it, it's not as much as I know now. So the sports are very, very similar, and they definitely help each other. But once I started competing in BJJ, I realized, okay, these are different things. I'm learning a brand new sport here. I can't just judo my way into beating these girls who are absolutely class at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So then I started taking it a little bit more serious than I've ever meant to, if that makes sense.
Well, I feel like you have the personality to, you find something, you're like, and I need to be good at this, and I need to learn this. And so many athletes operate that way. I never, ever thought I would do jiu-jitsu, even though my husband had been doing it for a long time. I just never thought it was for me until
you did it.
Until I did it. Until it was on my own terms and in my own special way. And then it can become a huge part of, it feels so different than other sports where it does fully become a part of you, not just what you do, but who you are, how you spend your time, how you think. It just really takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, I think it's just, there's so many different things to it. There's so many, before I just thought, oh, you just have your submissions and you have a little scramble on the floor, but there's just so much. People have invented so many different techniques and different things. And I'm just like, this is there's so much into this sport, And
just, you'll never have anything ever fully figured out because there's just so many generations. Like I'm probably going to mess this up, but like I heard this analogy of jujitsu and so many different combat sports where it's like the galaxy where right when you start to kind of understand one universe, there's so many others that you can like just kind of unlock and discover. And it's this never ending web. And that was honestly one of the things that attracted me to getting involved in jiu-jitsu was the process of like truly trying to understand and string together steps, because I'm so much more of like a big picture and feel things out. It's really hard for me to follow directions. So I knew this was going to be really helpful for my cognitive health to try to like learn something that has so many steps and memorization and then repetition and actually drilling that. And it's the only sport and only thing I do that actually keeps me present. The only thing I've ever done. If I'm running, I'm thinking. If I'm lifting, I'm thinking and probably going to record an Instagram post. But like jiu-jitsu is the only thing that keeps me fully present. And that is a gift that most people never get to unlock.
No, it's true, because if you're not present, if you're not concentrating, then you absolutely didn't take anything away. And then when you go sparring or whatever, you're not going to know what to do. So it's, it does require a lot of focus. And I found that, I don't know if I've done judo since I was a kid, so it almost became automatic in my brain. Whereas with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the positions that they get themselves in, I'm like, shit, I need to actually watch this because I'm not going to know. And then you can follow, like you start a technique and there's a billion different things that you can do from that one. Right. And, if you go to a good club, they tend to follow on from one technique into this could happen and that could happen and that could happen. And these are the answers to all of these things. If you're not, keeping up with it.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. Absolutely. So you guys opened up your own jiu-jitsu club. Is that what it is? Jiu-jitsu, or do you have other offerings?
So it's Carlson Gracie Hall. So it's mainly grappling. Okay. It is mainly grappling that we do. But over the years, we got a striking coach and we got MMA classes going on. So we do have other things, but I would still say that we are our strongest at grappling. And we're very much different gyms have different sort of, call it games. And we are very much wrestling based and top pressure. And, we don't tend to pull guard and things like that. So, and that's obviously come from our background, but right. I would say we're predominantly grappling.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then you were running this gym and at some point you got pregnant when you were training, owning a business, having moved again. So what was your pregnancy like?
It was a complete surprise. It was kind of like, obviously it's never a surprise because, you know what you're doing. But it was kind of a surprise. And like you said, we had, I'd say recently moved to Hull, because about a year, that's not a long time. And we had recently just moved gyms from the really small one to a bigger one. And I was kind of like, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to compete. I'm going to see where it takes me. It can't be that hard, right? I was training all the time. I kind of almost, as you do, I think when you have been an athlete in the past, you almost become obsessed with it. And I did. And all of a sudden, my period wasn't coming anymore. I found out quite late when I was pregnant. Like, it's weird. But I don't note things down. I don't know when my period comes. I thought, it's been a while, but I didn't mind because I don't like my period. So I thought, fuck it. It is what it is. It will come eventually. And then I thought, no, hang on. It's been quite some time now. And my body was just changing. I could just see different things. And I thought, and when you come from a weight-controlled sport, you're very, very aware of your body. You're aware of every single inch. I can tell when I've put on 0.6 in my weight. I can tell it's not good, but, unfortunately, we know those things.
Yeah.
And I said to my partner at the time, I'm going to take a pregnancy test. And he even laughed. And he was like, oh, definitely not. And I said, no, I know, but maybe because I'm worried, that might be why it's delayed. Anyway, so I took one and it came out positive. So I thought, no, it's broken. So I put in another one, came out positive, and I thought, do you know what? It's the same batch, so both of them must be faulty. So I threw it out, went to the shops, bought another one, did it again, and it was positive again. And I'm thinking, that's so weird. All of these pregnancy tests are broken. It's very strange. So I went to the shops and I got another one because I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was all positive, and then I was like, right, panic mode. My partner was buzzing. He was super excited. I was excited, and I was like, shit. And then it hit me, But I think looking back now, we have no idea, do we? It hits you and you're like, oh shit, this is going to be hard. But still, then I had no idea.
So it's a big shift to even like your identity then when you have been training your whole life. And it's also not just what you do, it's also your work. And every part of you is connected to sport and honestly, and use of your body. And I think that can be really hard for athletes too. It's like so much of our work, so much of our effort, so much of our recreation, enjoyment, everything is physical. So then when you have something new, like a pregnancy and you're growing a baby, that can really shift how you feel, what you do, why you do the things that you've always done. It just really like creates a change in dynamic in the relationship you have with yourself, with your sport, with your activities, your mindset, all of those things.
It does. And at the time, you look through social media, and I think social media is a thing that it can be a blessing. Like I found you and I found your page, and that was amazing because all of a sudden I didn't feel like I was the only one going through something anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But the vast majority of it sometimes isn't very positive. And the reason why is because when I started, doing my research, I thought, okay, now I'm pregnant. But I feel like I'm an athlete. And I feel like although I don't do judo anymore, I was kind of going back into being competitive at a sport. And, I've left my job now, my normal job, and the gym is all that we do. So coaching is my job as well. But now I'm pregnant. Let me see what other women do when they're pregnant and they're also active. And let me tell you, that was the worst thing that I could have done, I think, is look up what everyone else was doing. Because, things that tend to be online tend to be quite perfect, right? So I'm thinking, at this point, I don't have a big bump yet. I'm just, And I thought, do you know what? Look at all of these. They're smashing it. She is deadlifting 200 kilos and she's 9 months pregnant. I'll be fine. I'll be doing all of that. And, it's not like that. We're all different. Our bodies are different. The way that, our sport is very difficult to train whilst you're pregnant. I have seen women do it. I have seen it and I admire them, but still we are all very different, whether you feel comfortable doing it or not. And it's a full contact sport. And I'm a very aggressive fighter, let's say, and I don't know how to pull myself back. So there was no way that I could have trained whilst I was pregnant. So for me, it was this big shift, and the way it felt was that what I was being ripped away completely. You are no longer that person. You no longer have this sport that you can just do whenever you want. It was a shock to me, especially, when you start getting bigger. And I was in denial the whole time. I was like, no, I can still train. I can still do this. I can still do that. And you just sometimes, and I definitely did that. I put my body through things that I didn't really have to because I felt like, no, I need to keep training because this is who I am. Who am I without this, And eventually you get to a certain point of your pregnancy where even those small things that you were doing are really difficult to do. And then you're watching people around you getting better. Because I was at the gym every single night. I was still working there. I became the money lady, and the check-in lady. And you watch everyone, they're competing, they're doing really well, they're progressing. You watch people that, you know, started it after you started it, but they progressed for that whole year or however long. And you start seeing them getting stronger, getting fitter, getting better. And you're just sitting there thinking, and everyone around you is progressing. And you just feel awful because you're like, I've been left behind, which is really sad that women feel that way because you are growing a human being. It's insane. What your body is doing is incredible. Yet you feel like you're getting left behind.
Right. God, there's so many good points there. And like what we've talked about off this podcast of just like the culture of how women feel participating in these kind of sports. And so much of it does get connected to this FOMO or this comparison, or when you are sidelined, whether it's an injury or it's pregnancy, or you've had to have a surgery or you're recovering postpartum, like you said, you see others around you. And it's like, it's so hard not to compare yourself when that's already a part of the culture. There's already like people that almost get pitted against each other unnecessarily, or it's just how it feels. And now you're really having to take a step back, even though ultimately, you know, it's a very good thing. This is a positive thing, but yet you're still sidelined and you're not able to train. You want to train and train in the way that you want to train. And it can feel really frustrating. And for a lot of especially the jiu-jitsu athletes I'm working with, like it's depressing. Like they are depressed during their pregnancy because they're like, I feel so limited. And even though I can drill or I can do flow rolling or I'm working on this, I'm working on that, it's just not the same no matter what. You're not getting the intensity. You're not in the same kind of routine. And even if you try to keep the routine, things are different and it is valid. It's okay for it to be different, but it can still be sidelined. And I think, you know, we have wisdom of being on the other side where I didn't start jiu-jitsu till after I had babies, but I feel like I have the wisdom now of having slightly older kids where like, it really is a temporary season and you are not set back, even if it feels like it. Like I promise it is not for nothing. Like it is not for nothing. You will actually be a better athlete, but like, my God, having that grace and patience during those seasons are so freaking, it's just so hard. It's so depressing.
It's exactly what you've just said. And that's a big thing. It's not a forever thing. It's definitely a temporary thing. And I do, you know, I've competed, I've done loads, I've done more, I think, in grappling in terms of my athletic career than I might have done in judo. So I've done a lot more athletically after I've had a child than before I had a child. So there is that sense of I'm a better version of myself, 100%. But you only realize that
after.
During it, honestly, it was so hard. And the thing is, what's the hardest, and you might agree, and I think a lot of other women will agree because I chat to so many women who have been through it, is how much it's not okay to not be okay. You know, you're a new mum. Everything has to be wonderful. You need to be happy. You need to feel fulfilled. You need to feel like you know, your dream's here now and life is amazing and you have a blessing, and you cannot in any way, shape or form think of this other than a blessing, because there are so many other women that wish they were in your shoes. And it's just so overwhelming how happy you have to be in a time that it's the most confusing for yourself. And you just think, everything around me is telling me that I need to feel buzzing. Right. And I just don't feel that.
Yeah.
And then you start to think, what's wrong with me? Am I a bad person? And then it's just, you just put yourself in a deeper hole. And it's really difficult for anyone to understand this other than other mums who have been through it and they've got older kids now and they say, look, it is temporary. Yeah. But that's the frustrating thing, isn't that really frustrating, that the only people who truly understand are the ones that go through it? We should have a society that at this point is a little bit more empathetic now.
Yeah. And, I certainly experienced all of that with both of my babies, but especially my first one. And that was almost 11 years ago. And it was just so shocking how attached, like how depression and anxiety, especially postpartum, was fueled by just, you don't feel like yourself. And you know that you want to be happy and you love your baby, but you also are grieving aspects of who you are, whether it's your body and what it looks like now. Again, especially when you are an athlete, I feel like we are so much more prone. And in my decade of working with female athletes through pregnancy and postpartum, I feel like I actually can speak pretty specifically to this. Is like, yeah, like we probably are more prone to feeling this because so much of our activities and recreation, our body, our physicality, our routine is attached to what we can do and almost like in our control and on our own terms and process oriented, where if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to get this result. And then motherhood comes in and slaps you in the face and is like, actually, it's not about you. It's not about you anymore. Like, and you're going to have to adapt and acclimate and find a new routine that complements what you want as a mom, because yes, it matters, but also what your baby needs right now. And as they change and develop through different stages and seasons, and it can feel so frustrating to be that paused or that derailed or that inhibited by something that like we are also supposed to love, which is motherhood. Yes, you can love it. You can appreciate it. You wouldn't trade it for anything. And also there's this yearning for like, but God, I wish I could just go to the gym for 2 hours and not be interrupted. I wish I could do this. I wish I wasn't like scheduling my life around breastfeeding or scheduling my training around childcare and whatever. And like those seasons are so frustrating. And also, and again, I can say this now, I have a little bit of, I'm on the other side, is like those seasons and those frustrating experiences, they make you a better athlete. I swear to you, I am better now at 38 than I was at 28 as an athlete, period, for so many reasons. But I feel like it's because you go through the trenches of like having to really be adaptable with your body, with your training, with your approach, with the relationship you have with your body, with the relationship you have with your sport and training. Your ego drops and your willingness to like learn and adapt increases. And like all of those things ultimately make you better. But when you're in the trenches, it is so hard to live it.
Yeah. You explained it perfectly there. You said that you almost grieve for your old self. So as soon as you have the baby, it's almost like you are a different person. It's honestly, I have a very similar personality to what I had before Tiago.
Right.
However, I'm a different person in every way. And when you first have a baby, you're not, people say to you a little bit of, things will change. But that comment is sort of like passed on the wind. But you don't realize, no, girl, shit is going to change. This is big. And you are learning how to manage this life that is entirely in your hands. But it's almost like you're living with this thing in you that you don't know who you are anymore. And then you kind of like, no, and then you rush back. What I've done is I rushed back. I was in invitational called Grapple Fest 4, 5, 6 months after I had a C-section, an emergency C-section. And, that's 5 months postpartum. Now I understand what 5 months postpartum is. I was still in what people call it a baby bubble, which there's the good sides of it and the bad sides of it. I was supposed to still be in that. But what I've done instead was I had the baby and I thought, right, things didn't go to plan because I had a C-section, because what I wanted was a normal birth and to be back training the next day, right? That was my plan. The whole time I was like, that's what I am doing. But things didn't go how I wanted them to go, and I needed an emergency C-section. They needed to cut me open. So I thought, okay, well, on Google, how long does it take to recover from a C-section? Because that's what everyone does. And however long it said, I said, all right, well, I can half that because I just can.
Because it's me.
Because I just
Because I'm
can.
the exception.
Yeah, like I am different to every single woman in the world.
Right.
And then you put pressure on yourself. And then you say, hang on a second, you need to be this strong person that sports requires you to be. You need to be this resilient person that every sports person is. You need to be this do everything and don't complain about anything. You're an athlete. You're strong. You just have to do it. Fuck everything
Our
else.
default setting is that. And like you can't
Yeah.
do it. It really, I feel like, takes for so many of us, like, again, that almost slap in the face of like, and everything that worked prior isn't really going to serve you now. And like, I don't know, I chronically learned the hard way in every facet of life. Like, that is what it takes for me to learn lessons, is like a really hard experience. But I feel like motherhood does that for a lot of athletes. It just really reshifts your focus of like, what served me well before isn't fully serving me now. And in fact, maybe my athlete brain tendencies are sabotaging what I actually want, which is to feel good, to feel healthy, to feel happy. Like, all of these things, what worked before isn't effective in this season of life.
Yeah. It's exactly what you're saying. You can't apply the same things, even for something as small as, you gain weight, don't you, after you've had a baby, obviously. But I am used to being a weight making sport. So I have seen 52 kilos on my scales almost my whole life, obviously dehydrated, without eating properly, without having had my period for about 3 years, all of those things. But it doesn't matter. I'm used to seeing that number on the scale, so I need to get that number back. And, I knew how to lose 0.1, what I needed to do, how I needed to do it. I knew my body that well. And then it's the realization of, your body isn't like that anymore. You need to get to know this whole thing all over again, because what you've done before is not going to work now. And then you start, myself, I started to get so obsessed with losing weight, becoming stronger again, that I was ruining it for myself, really. I wasn't eating enough. I was training loads. I remember having points in my session that I was like, my scar hurts and around that area hurts. But you just keep going, because I've had surgeries before. So you almost put it on the same box. You say it was only a surgery. It's the same as the shoulder surgery I've had. And it's completely, absolutely not. But you put it in the same basket. You're like, you're supposed to feel pain. You're an athlete. This is supposed to happen. And then again, you just put yourself in that hole, because you just think, but I'm not improving, but I'm training so hard, but I'm just getting more tired, more exhausted. And it's crazy.
Yeah. And I think we forget, like, even if we have the tough mental toughness to put ourselves through that, which, like, we do. If you have grown up being an athlete, that is just literally ingrained into who you are. That is why, like, athlete brain, I'm like, this is a positive trait most of the time. And also, like, when you are in a season like early motherhood or pregnancy, but specifically now, like, how you're talking about being postpartum and trying to like train your way back into feeling like yourself again, like, what we forget is we're not sleeping well. If you're nursing, or even just the demand of feeding your baby, however you're feeding it, like, you're on a pretty strict routine.
Every 2 hours.
Yeah, hormonally, you are wrecked. Like, things are fluctuating, changing all the time. Core and pelvic health symptoms that you're either really predisposed to, or you kind of aggravate during postpartum by doing that too much too soon. Like, if you didn't have anything going on, by athlete braining your way through postpartum, like, the likelihood of you having some kind of core pelvic health symptom, or aggravating, making your diastasis worse, making prolapse symptoms come on, or making it worse, incontinence, things like that, pelvic pain around your scar, your C-section scar, all of these things we almost like aggravate by the very thing that we are hoping is going to solve our problems, which is our mental toughness. If I can just push myself to diet harder, to train more, to have a better routine, to do all these things, well, then I'm going to feel good. And in fact, that what worked prior is what sabotages us during a vulnerable season like postpartum.
Exactly that. And what's really difficult as well is that a lot of people around you won't necessarily understand what's going on in there. Like I said before, and it's such a shame that the people that you can relate to are always the mums and the women, and I just wish there needs to be more awareness of, listen, postpartum, pregnancy, everything around it is a real thing, and it needs to be addressed more. It needs to be understood so much more, because we are, like you said, we are just almost setting ourselves up for failure, because we're trying to do all of the things that we have done in the past. Whereas, when there's professionals involved, and eventually when I got a proper strength and conditioning coach who told me, listen, this is what's going on inside of you right now. This is what this exercise is going to help you with. Once I got someone that knew what was going on and I understood, then I thought, right, okay, then there's a process, my body needs to heal. But that's something that I had to look for, and I had to dig in, and who understands about this? And it's not something that is easily accessible, I don't think, and everyone who you speak to about these things that haven't gone through it, they almost are like, oh, it's temporary. It's going to pass. You'll be all right. And actually inside of you think, oh my God, no, this is serious. I'm not okay. I am not okay. I need help. Right. And if people around us were a little bit more aware, it would be so much of a better, more enjoyable journey, maybe. Still hard.
It would. But, like the other element to this, I think, is judo, Jiu Jitsu, combat sports. It's still a very male dominated arena, right? And like it's just, really and if you're a woman who participates in these sports, you're usually in the minority. Like, I mean, I'm usually one or two of us in class are women. And I feel like that it's not that way everywhere, but it is still a large majority of people who do these sports are men. The coaches are men. And then the culture of that is push harder, work harder. And when you're a girl or woman, you don't want to like do less. You don't want to be, bringing attention to yourself of being weaker or not trying as hard. And that like just doesn't go away. I think in any setting where you're like, I don't want to add extra attention. I don't want to be special. I want to be part of the group. I don't want special accommodations.
Exactly.
But that is ingrained into the culture, whether it's intentional or not. I think it makes it really hard to be a woman navigating something like pregnancy, or navigating having to like just figure out your body postpartum, when you're like, I know I should be able to do this, but I'm not quite ready. But then I think my coach wants me to, or my training partners expect X, Y, or Z of me. And it just becomes like mental warfare, because the culture doesn't fully understand. I mean, not just jiu-jitsu, like in general, our culture of like the fitness industry doesn't understand this season of life for female athletes and the pressures that we put on ourselves and the expectations and all of that, but especially 100%. In this environment.
No, in a combat sport, oh my God, the lack of knowledge, basic knowledge, very basic knowledge in this area is huge. Yeah. It's like, I got back on the mat and it was almost like, it was kind of like, I felt like I've never left, because it was so normal to be back on the mat. It was so like, oh, Ju's back. Yeah.
Baby's out, you're ready. Like, let's go.
Yeah, she's back. She's sparring. She's, there was no like, I don't know. I've got a very, very good friend actually who's had a baby after myself. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like knew everything that she was about to go through, if that makes sense. And I watched her coming back onto the mat as well. And she was just like, she said to me one time, she was like, Ju, I'm so sorry. I didn't support you in the right way. Yeah. And that really got to me, because she is a very, very good friend. And she did support me amazingly when I was going back on the mat. But she said to me, I didn't do the right things. I didn't give you the right support. I get it now. I understand it now, how hard this is. I understand now how hard it was for you to just get back on the mat, to when you put in the girls group chat, any girls in tonight, and there was no response. I get how that feels now, that you needed that sort of safety net of, I need to have at least 2 girls on the mat because I can't cope with a 100-kilo man putting his knee on my belly right now. So, even that just opened my eyes so much, because even someone as supportive as she is, as amazing as she is, recognize that I didn't support you in the right way. Now I get it, but it's only because she's been through it.
Yeah, those are always I feel like those are the best texts to get though, and not because we ever held anything against the people that didn't or couldn't know how to help, but just more of we are all growing and looking back and seeing, just like you and I can look at people that maybe we could have shown up differently for, or could have empathized differently with. I feel like it's just an awkward rite of passage where you just gain this perspective and appreciation and then own it, right? We can send that text saying man, I'm sorry. When you experienced a miscarriage, or when you're struggling with breastfeeding, or when you were peeing your pants, I didn't know what to do or say or help you. I'm so sorry, but I get it now. And I thank you for sharing that with me. I'm sorry I couldn't be better. And then it's just, again, this passing it on and making it better for the next generation that comes after us.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do. I think a lot of women in this sport, actually, a lot of the girls around me that train with me, they're having babies and so on now. And we're each sort of making it a little bit better for each other, for the next person that comes along. And I think that's the point of all of this, of having these conversations, is to make it a little bit better, and to know that the first time that woman walks back on the mat, she doesn't feel like herself. Yep. She doesn't feel comfortable. She's trying to get herself back without knowing. This is at the early stages. She's trying to get herself back without knowing that she's not necessarily going to get that back.
Yeah.
And she's going to have her own journey of finding her new self. But for you to realize that you are a new person, you need to go through the realization of, I am not going to get that girl back. And that's quite hard. That's really, really hard. And that's not something that I think we communicate very well, maybe with our partners, with our family members. If we say to someone, I don't feel like myself, that can be a phrase that is taken very lightly. Okay. And actually, no, honestly, I am no longer the person that I used to be. And that's a big, big thing, especially going back to the sport. I certainly rushed into everything. I rushed into competing again. I think at one point I was competing almost every single weekend. And that's quite unusual for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think. I was doing a lot of shows. I was getting invites to a lot of sub-only matches. And I was taking them all. I was saying yes to absolutely everything. And I was fighting a lot of girls that were a lot higher level than I was in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I thought, no, hang on. I've done judo my whole life. So I'm not fighting people that are blue belts at BJJ. No, absolutely not. I'm going for your purples and browns. And, they've been doing this sport for their whole life. I've just had a baby. I have no idea who the fuck I am anymore. I'm just trying to prove to everyone that, listen, I've had a baby. I'm still here. I'm the same person. I'm still competing. I'm training. But along the way, you are absolutely wrecking yourself, because everything that you feel, you shove it somewhere. You put it under the carpet. You just shove it in there because you think, I'm going to compete here. I'm going to do that. You keep your mind so busy doing so many other things that everything that you feel gets brushed under the carpet. But eventually, it catches up with you. Whether that comes as an injury, I had a very serious injury. And then whether that comes as a mental breakdown, however, it will pop back up. And the thing for me was the way I rushed back, it was actually crazy. People thought you are crazy. And I thought, no, do you know what? I'm not crazy. I'm an athlete. That's what we do. You get back to the sport. I was doing it before. If you're a lawyer, you go back into practice after you've had a baby, don't you? I'm an athlete. I'm going back to my work. But, our job is physically insanely demanding. And you're not going to be the same athlete anymore. So that journey of, after I've had a baby, I want to get back into it. I think we rush. We really do. We want to try and prove ourselves. We want to feel better about ourselves. We want recognition from people as well. Look at her. She's a superwoman. She's just had a baby and she's doing all of that.
Right.
When in reality, it's not like that. You need some downtime.
Yeah, but it's so tempting. And I mean, to find validation, and so many athletes thrive off of that. Like, that is fuel to what we do, is like, yeah, tell me I'm doing a good job. Even though, like, I don't need that. Like, you want that validation. And that's what fuels you, especially when you are depleted on the inside. And like motherhood, especially early postpartum, like, it is very depleting. And so it's easy to seek out our dopamine habits of like, well, how can I achieve something? What can I do to like check off that like dopamine of working towards something and then accomplishing it, and then having that be recognized by others? Because so much of motherhood is like not validated. Like, you don't get praised for like nursing at 2:00 in the morning, or for taking your baby to do this. Like, that's almost an expectation, even though there is so much effort and sacrifice that goes into caring and loving loving a baby.
Yeah.
But you don't get the validation. So it's easy to want to seek that out in other ways.
You're exactly right. You've put it so perfectly again. It's like you're used to getting validated for your sport because you train so hard, but you are yourself seeing the results of your hard work, and other people are seeing it as well because of your medals, etc. But exactly as you said, motherhood is such a hard job. Yeah. Something as small as feeding your baby every 2 hours on no sleep, making healthy meals, tidying up the house at the same time that your kid is having a tantrum, going to the doctors and your kid doesn't want to play ball and he starts to run around in the car and you can't catch them. All of those things, when they're happening, you just think, this is insane. And there is no recognition for it.
It's almost like who have I become? What has my life become? Because you're like, what am I even doing? Yeah. And then slowly, over time, you get pieces of yourself back. And I know that, like we say, like, you, like, there's parts of you that are no longer, but there's also parts of you that, like, they'll forever be a part of you. Like, that girl is not dead. She is still very much alive, and just has to be like leveraged differently at different times. And she does come back. She does come back to life. It just kind of like takes a little bit of time and trial and error of like really understanding what that timeline looks like for you. And again, those seasons where your workouts are limited, where your nutrition and your body isn't what you would want it to be, those seasons are not for nothing. Like, I promise those seasons are the ones that make you better. Your nap time 15-minute workout, that freaking counts. It adds up over time to when suddenly you're like, I actually have a lot more time now to work out, or I can go to that 6 a.m. class because my baby's not waking up at 6 a.m. for me to have to feed it or whatever. Like, these moments come back. But I think the hard part for so many of us is like, of course, I'm not the same person I was at 21, right? Like, I'm not living, nothing about my life now is what I was doing at 21. And so I don't expect to feel and look like I did at 21. But pregnancy and becoming a mother is so much change so fast that, like, you're still saying, but wait, I'm still that person.
Exactly.
But realistically, we're not. Like, we know that we change over time, that our body changes, our brain, our life, what our dynamics, all of these things, we know logically that, like, they change. But pregnancy and motherhood make it glaring, like so glaring.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just such a big change and it's so fast. Yeah. You're used to kind of things happening gradually. Mm-hmm. And once you're a mom, absolutely nothing is gradual anymore. It's like bombshells coming at you left, right, center, and you just have to deal with it. You just have to deal with it. And I do think, like what you said, you know, we change a lot, but I do now. My kid is only 3 still, so you know, sometimes it's still quite tough, and he is a priority, and training, you know, it's slowly becoming something that I'm doing quite a lot again, but he's still quite small. So, you know, it's still difficult at times, but I can already see a difference from when he was 1 to now.
Yeah.
So now I can realize, right, you know, look at the difference from 1 to now. So when he's 6, this is going to be a little bit more different. When he is 8, this is going to be different. So now I'm finally, and honestly, touch wood, touch everything, I'm finally at a point where I understand that the circumstances will change and that I will be able to focus again on something like I used to focus on my sport so much and be so, you know, I want to do this really well. Eventually I will. And, you know, the focus might change. You know, it might be that I'm not a competitor anymore, but it might be that I help people to become competitors. You know, I do this women's only camp that I absolutely, it's the light of my life. I absolutely love it. I get about 50 to 60 women together for a full weekend, and we train together, and I pass on all of my knowledge and so on. And I love doing that. And I love doing that because that fuels my soul. But I couldn't do that when Tiago was first born. So now that I've taken myself a little bit out of the situation, I've finally given myself some time to heal. I can see the progress that I've made. And I know that, you know, in a year, it's going to be even better. In another year, it's going to be even better, more manageable. And it's not that it becomes easier, because often as women, we say that things become easier. But it's not that. We are just amazing at what we do. And we are learning to navigate motherhood every day so much better and better. So the credit is fully down to women, because women are incredible, absolutely incredible. So it's not that it becomes easier. Yeah. We're just fucking amazing, and we just get how to
different, and we acclimate, and we kind of just know how to adjust our expectations through each season more. You know, like there's just I talk a lot about athletic maturity, but then there's also like maturity and just becoming a mom, and what you like. That's why, you know, how you raise your second kid typically is slightly different than what you did with your first. And you're like, okay, because I have a little bit more perspective now. I get it. Like I'm not, you can't be as rigid or as this or whatever, because no 2 babies are the same. And as your life continues on, your routine changes, and you just get better at acclimating.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the beauty of it in a way. That, you know, there's a lot of the friends who I speak to who have had babies after me, and they are going through that initial tough time, because it's fucking tough. It's hard. Postpartum is a real thing, and it needs to be more, you know, in the surface of everything. But when I speak to them and they are going through those things, I'm just like, when I speak to them, I almost cry as I'm speaking to them, because I really want them to truly believe that, look, it is temporary and it's really shit right now. I get it. It's shit. It's hard to navigate, but you're going to learn so many things that are going to make you a better human being, a more rounded human being. And then everything else that you do in life seems to be a little bit better. I just think after you become a mom, you know, credit to dads. Dads are amazing too, by the way. But I just have a soft spot for moms. You become a better human in life, I think. Like, you just deal with situations in a more empathetic way. You just look after each other in a much more loving way. And you genuinely give a shit about people as well, which is something that as an athlete is really tough as well, because athletes are very, very selfish, extremely selfish. And you grow up only thinking about yourself, and that's it. And after you become a mom and you're still an athlete, you manage somehow to not be selfish. You're still an athlete. You're still looking after other people. So that's a better human all around.
Mm.
That's what I try to say to the girls. I'm like, listen, it's shit now. And I know shit is hitting the fan, and you feel like you can't I get it. trust me.
And I think like one of the most powerful things we can do, like if you are a little bit ahead of somebody in the season of life they're in, like all of us are coaches in our own ways. Like, just like I'm ahead of you in my motherhood life, like you can look at what I'm doing or the life that I have and say like, okay, you take aspects of things that you like, that you want to model after, and the girls can look at you and like what you're doing, how you're raising Tiago, what you're doing with the gym, and say like, okay, like it's still possible to compete, or it's still possible to like have a gym that I care about. It's still possible to pursue a dream of running a women's camp. Like we act as models and coaches in how we live our life and what we choose to embody. And no two situations or people or situations are the same, of course. But I think it is helpful to see more people that are a little bit ahead of you and say like, that is what I want. That's what I want to try to model. That's what I'm going to try to work for. And I know that like, you know, my sentiment of like athleticism does not end when motherhood begins. Like it's true. But so many other things don't end when motherhood begins. Like it's just things are different, but we get so good at acclimating.
Exactly. You get that good at managing it all. And that's really important. And that's why pages like yours need to stay alive and keep going, because you kind of, when you can relate to someone, not only positively, when you hear someone saying, someone who's got their shit together now, but you hear them saying, I really fucking struggled. It was hard. Like you hear the rawness of it. You can relate so much more and you can help yourself so much more as well. And that's why I'm massive on, especially my social media. You're going to see me in there sometimes. I've had friends send me messages saying, Julia, you need to brush your hair. Like, why are you making these videos? Are you okay? Are you going through something right now? But I'm a big fan of showing every emotion, every stage of your life. If I'm in shit, you guys are going to know I'm in shit, because nothing is perfect. Yep. Life isn't perfect. Sometimes I feel awful, and I'm going to show those times. I really am, because for me, what kind of got me to just keep pursuing and keep going and be like, no, let's get out of this hole, was seeing these women that I admired going through shit as well. So not just the perfect posts and amazing things. No, I needed to see that I was normal. What I was going through was normal. How I was feeling was normal. And the only way that I managed to feel that way was relating to other people who shared how they felt at the time, and I think that's so important.
Oh, I love that you are committed to keeping it real, and you are being a coach in a variety of ways, both with your business and in the camps that you're doing and as a mother. And I think that's really powerful. So tell me, where can people find you and follow you?
I'm on Instagram. Like I said, I don't have like a professional Instagram. I don't know. It's just the raw me. I'm on Instagram, probably more active on there. It's Scardone, and my daily struggles, my kids' tantrums, my good days, my bad days, they're all in there. And yes, I do have friends that text me saying, Ju, honestly, you need to brush your hair today, or do something, or hold the camera at a different angle. What are you doing? But it's me.
So. Have friends that keep it real also. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and perspective. I think that a lot of people are going to relate, and this conversation extends so far beyond just the martial arts, combat sports world. I think it's applicable to so many different female athletes navigating pregnancy and postpartum. If you guys listening need support navigating these seasons, you want a training program, you can check out the Pregnant Athlete Training Program or the 8-week Postpartum Athlete Training Program. And if you want to become a coach who can better support the athletes in your community, the women in your community through pregnancy and postpartum, you can check out the Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism Coaching Certification. Enrollment is always open. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practice Brave podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review and help us spread the work we are doing to improve the overall information and messaging in the fitness industry and beyond. Now, if you are pregnant and you are looking for a trustworthy exercise program to follow, I have you covered. The Pregnant Athlete Training Program is a well-rounded program for pregnancy with workouts for each week that are appropriate for your changing body. That's 36 weeks of workouts, 3 to 4 workouts each week, and tons of guidance on exercise strategy. We also have an at-home version of that program. If you are postpartum and you're looking for an exercise program to follow, the 8-week Postpartum Athlete Training Program would be a really great way to help bridge the gap between rehab and the fitness you actually want to do. From there, we have the Practice Brave Fitness Program, which is an ongoing strength and conditioning program where you get new workouts each week and have a lot of guidance from myself and my co-coach, Heather Osby. This is the only way that I'm really offering ongoing coaching at this point in time. If you have ever considered becoming a certified pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach, I would love to have you join us. Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism is a self-paced online certification course that will up-level your coaching skills and help connect the dots between pelvic health and long-term athletic performance, especially during pregnancy and postpartum. Become who you needed and become who your online and local community needs by becoming a certified pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach. Thank you again for listening to the Practice Brave podcast. I appreciate you. And please help me continue spreading this messaging, this information, and this work.